This meeting is being recorded.
All right, guys, Coach Gaglione here. So this is like a bonus little call I got with Sean here, who's a sports business major at Plymouth. So we're gonna record the interview for him, and then if you guys hopefully get something out of it. But Sean, you can kind of go ahead and start firing your questions away.
Um, so basically my first question is just overall, like what's your education? Where'd you go to school? And what degree did you get?
Excellent. And then just for like the audio quality, I'll probably just mute you just in between questions, and then if you need to speak, you just let me know. And sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I have like a little bit of an interesting background. So I went to Malloy College, which actually for education. So I have a master's in education. Before I opened up my business full time, I was a personal trainer. I took some coursework at Hofstra University, which is in Long Island, New York. The certification at the time was Academy of Applied Personal Training, AAPTE. Yeah, so Academy of Applied Personal Training Education, I think something like that. I always forget the letters. So I started off basically, I was a teacher. I was a special education teacher for about 6 years. I coached football, I coached wrestling, and I was a personal trainer on the side. So I was very, very busy. And I actually started volunteering at my old high school weight room, and that's kind of how I got my start in strength and conditioning. So that was kind of how I got started in my education. Outside of that, um, very much self-taught in the field in terms of business, in terms of exercise science and things like that. I did do some internships as well at Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning and Cressy Performance back in 2011. And then in 2011, as well as 2017, I did kind of an informal kind of observational internships, actually learning under Louis Simmons and Westside Barbell. Rest in peace, Louis. So I got a lot of experience. And then over the years, I've also just kind of less formal stuff. I traveled all over, the country to kind of learn from different people, and especially in strength and conditioning, also in powerlifting. So that's kind of my educational background, if you will. But my master's is in education. I got my personal training certification through AAPTE. I studied they offered it at Hofstra at the time. And then in 2011 was when I've opened up Gaglione Strength, founded the company, started working for myself, and then kind of the rest has been history. So that's kind of my kind of background as far as how I got started and my education.
When I was in high school and stuff.
Oh, sorry, I think it got cut out. So can you repeat that again?
Oh, sorry. So growing up, I grew up in the town next to Mike Boyle.
Oh,
So I actually played lacrosse with his son and stuff when I was in high school. So
very cool.
it's a pretty cool connection. Um, so what motivated you to go from teaching to full time with this, in like terms of the personal training and the like making this your main business and source of income?
Yeah. So first off, I'll just say, like, I'm not kind of talking bad of any profession or whatever. It's just kind of the situation that I was in. But over the years, I started to get more and more tired of like just some of the people I was around. Again, no one in particular, that sort of thing. But I just kind of felt like I couldn't like leave my mark and have the impact that I knew that I wanted to have. Um, One of the reasons I got into coaching in the first place was because I was a failed athlete. My goal was to be an all county wrestler. I wrestled, for Plainedge High School, Section 8, which is a pretty big county, but not a huge school by any means. And I was a fat kid growing up. I was 275 pounds as a ninth grader, but I worked really hard. I ended up becoming one of the captains my senior year. unfortunately, my senior year in football, wrestling was my main sport, but my senior year in football, I ended up tearing my hamstring doing some sprints the first practice, and I ended up rehabbing it, got some work done to it. I was able to come back, but I was never quite the same. And even to this day, I have some issues kind of side to side. It was pretty severe injury, it bled out and things like that. And so basically I had to wrestle my senior year on one leg. I still had a very good year. I beat some all state kids. I beat some all county kids. I had a very tough bracket my senior year for the county tournament. And I ended up losing in double overtime in the round to place to the counties. I was about 12 seconds away. I ended up getting dropped on my head in regulation. It was an illegal slam. I definitely had a concussion that was undiagnosed. It went to overtime. The guy stalled. Eventually he escaped and he won. So I was like seconds away from achieving my goal. But I knew that if I was healthy, if I had both my legs were healthy, because I was very strong, even then I started to like lift really seriously as a 10th grader in high school. I knew that if I was healthy, if I trained smart, if I trained better, I would have achieved my goal. And I was kind of very depressed, but that kind of depression led me to kind of go mad. And that's when I really started to research. And that's where I started to learn. And I never wanted any athlete to kind of go through what I went through. So that's kind of how I got into kind of training people and coaching and helping people. I just didn't want them to have the pain that I had as a failed athlete. And lo and behold, I started taking some wrestlers under my wing. I started kind of doing some experiments on them, and they were kind of my guinea pigs, and they started to do really well. We got some kids that were like not starting. Eventually they were starting. Went from all conference to all county. Then we worked with, we developed, helped develop a state champion. We had some guys that went to Division I schools. One kid went to Harvard, was a 4-year starter. Another kid was a 4-year starter at Princeton, a couple of NCAA qualifiers. So I worked with primarily wrestling and football. But over the years, what ended up happening was, and this was kind of like a defining moment if there was ever one, but I was working at the high school at the time, and then I was a middle school wrestling coach. So then I would have to drive over. There was a little bit of a lag. And I always tell this story, but this was kind of the moment I knew that I kind of had to get out. And with wrestling, you have to set up the mats, and you got to mop them, and you got to make sure they're clean, because you can get like skin infections and stuff. If anyone's ever wrestled, this. You don't want to get ringworm and things like that. But the other thing with wrestling, at some point we're going to stop playing sports. We're going to stop. You mentioned you played lacrosse. Football is going to be over. Wrestling is going to be over. All these sports will come to an end, right? So I would have the kids, I taught them how to set up the mats, clean them. And it was, part of it was teaching some responsibility, some teamwork and work ethic. And I remember one day, I got called into my athletic director's office, who's essentially like your boss if you're a coach. And I remember I got yelled at because, the kids shouldn't be doing anything unless I'm there, even though they had an adult chaperone and all this stuff. And, a parent complained that they shouldn't be handling chemicals and all this stuff. And, whatever, I'm paraphrasing because this is many, many, many years ago at this point. And it was really frustrating that this is kind of like the culture. And this is obviously, I'm sure, things are different now. Maybe it's worse. But, I'm trying to kind of develop some habits for these young men. And I was kind of we weren't on the same page, and there was a lot of politics, and it just, the administration, the teachers, the coaches, and the parents were not on the same page. And I started to kind of get, in my head that I was like, what, I think if I start to, just focus on my business was starting to do well. I started to make an impact. At least if I failed or I succeeded, at least it was my fault. And I just knew that I could make a bigger impact with these kids if I could kind of be in more control, even though I never really wanted to own my own business. So, in 2011, I founded the company. In 2014, I actually got a tattoo of a burning ship, just symbolizing I'm burning the boats, that I was never going back to a 9-to-5 job. Never. I was always going to work for myself. So if you know that old kind of saying about burning the ships, basically it's zero options mentality. And I'm not saying that's the right thing for everyone. I'm not saying, but originally the plan was to put at least 10 years into the teaching system, so I'd be a little bit more sensible, have a retirement. I've never really done things like kind of the typical way. I've never really kind of followed like the typical path, for better or for worse. I just always felt I needed to do what I felt was right and not necessarily what was popular. Even in the powerlifting world, even with how we train people, like I've always been a little bit against the grain. But just in my heart, I just knew like that was what I felt was right. So I know it's like a lot of, some of this is like, not always, and there are times where I felt like I should have been a little bit more calculated, and even now but I tend to, be very sometimes emotional with my decisions, which is not always smart from a business standpoint, but it allows me to put my head, I could sleep good at night. And I know that I'm doing the right thing by the people that I work with. I'm doing the right thing by the community. I'm not going to like compromise my beliefs and what I think is the right thing to do just because someone else told me otherwise, or a certain method is more popular. And that's because that, again, I remember being that kid that I trained very hard, but I didn't train the right way. And I never just want anyone to like, I always wanted to make sure that people were in the best position they could be to achieve whatever goals they wanted, especially, those physical goals. So now, we ended up transitioning more towards, as a lot of those wrestlers started to graduate, some of those wrestlers and football players, I kind of invited them to kind of come powerlift with me. And that's kind of how the powerlifting team and training was kind of born. And we've kind of had a lot of success with just general strength training and just getting people ready for powerlifting meets and teaching people how to be strong. But also with having a very like low, like injury risk and injury rate, because of all like the methods and the science and the hardships that I kind of went through. So ultimately, the reason why I kind of took a chance on myself and why I opened up my own company, was because I wanted to make sure that I had the best impact that I could. And I felt like the only way I could do that was if I was in control of, how we, taught the kids and how we were able to administer the coaching. I had to do it my way. I always joke that I'd love to just work for somebody like myself, but even now there's just very few gyms that kind of do things that the way that we do in like a team setting and a group environment. And even with the powerlifting, we kind of do things, because that was one thing I took from football and wrestling, is that I wanted to make sure teamwork and that kind of working together was still an element of what we did, because I thought that was really still very lacking today. So I know there's like a lot there, but that was ultimately why I kind of decided to kind of branch off and transition from teaching to running my own company.
That's awesome. Do you think like the fact that your route to becoming a strength coach and powerlifting coach being untraditional, do you think that's what made you kind of stand out from a lot of other coaches and be more successful than someone that came from like a cookie cutter program?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I don't necessarily, one thing I want to kind of be careful. I always try to be careful with my words, because I feel like, especially as an educator in the space and, a coach, I think it's really important that we're careful with how we communicate things. So I don't necessarily think that what we do is necessarily like the best way or the only way or the right way. But what I think that I offer, there's a couple of things I think that I have a unique perspective. So I think coming from the teaching background, and especially the special education background, I've worked with students with disabilities, students with autism, students that are emotionally disturbed. So I definitely think that I have a different like level of also patience and understanding that a lot of coaches that maybe just come from an exercise science background, they just may not have the same experience level kind of dealing with those types of learning disabilities and just, people that really just struggle with learning in general. So I think that coming from a teacher's perspective, I think that's a really valuable experience, because I kind of understand how people learn a little bit better. And I understand that, like, if I can kind of get someone who's maybe has autism or is emotionally disturbed, and I can kind of teach them something that they don't even want to learn, well, I'm definitely going to be able to get someone to, if someone wants to learn how to squat better and they're a power lifter, I'm definitely going to have a leg up on those people, because I could really understand how to kind of teach someone that really doesn't even, they have a hard time like just learning in general. The other thing that I think I really have a unique perspective on, especially kind of coming from the powerlifting background and teaching people how to be strong. I was that failed athlete. I had more injuries in high school than I've had throughout my entire powerlifting career. I've been powerlifting competitively since 2006. I only took 1 year off. I've competed in 6 different weight classes. I've been as heavy as 340 pounds. I've competed in the 198s and everything in between. And while I think that also allowed me to kind of understand different body types, because I was a much different person at 340 than I was at 198. I'm sitting about like 250 right now, which is a little bit heavier than I'd like. But, we just, had the holidays and, I let my diet kind of go a little bit awry. But I'm going to do a curl competition and then start to trim down for my wedding in 2024. So I think one of the things that I've always tried to do as a coach is lead by example, and also lead by example, and also teach people from my experience, because I'm not a science guy. I'm not, I don't have a PhD like some of these people, but I do have a lot of experience. But I still like to learn as well. So I have the teaching background, which allows me to I think, communicate pretty effectively and teach people effectively. I was not the greatest athlete, so I kind of can understand where like the lowest level of person can kind of come from. But I've also worked with all-time record holders, so I understand what the highest level of person can achieve. I've had 1,000 pounds in my back. I've squatted 800 pounds in 6 weight classes. So I've achieved a level of success myself in multiple weight categories. So I think that really kind of gives me a different perspective as a coach. And I never am going to ask an athlete to do something that I haven't done myself, which is also why I'm actually training for the strict curl competition right now. I'm doing a strict curl competition. December 30th will be my first strict curl competition. I did do a curl competition, a standing curl competition in 2006 when I was a teenager, but that was a long time ago and the rules are slightly different. So having the education background, being a failed athlete, having a lot of experience myself, and kind of leading by example, I would say those are the things that would separate myself from other coaches, if that makes sense. But I think definitely having the teaching background was extremely important for, my success, long term.
All right, awesome. That also resonates with me a lot because I'm dyslexic, so I was in special education my whole time learning, basically. So the weight room is definitely a outlet for that in a way, I'd say. So so now that you're out of teaching and in full time and um, your own thing, what does your day to day look like? Like from start to finish, how would your schedule be?
I'm figuring that out. So that's one thing that's kind of a blessing and a curse. When you have a 9 to 5, you know where you got to be, right? Right now, I'm in an interesting transition because I'm running the New York location remotely. I've had that location since 2011. I just opened up a second location in Milton, Delaware. Only have a few clients there right now. We are hosting our first meet there. And that was not like our first, without getting kind of into too much specifics or kind of throwing anyone under the bus. It was not actually my intention to open up a second location. I was trying to work with other people, but again, history kind of repeats itself. And it was, sometimes maybe I don't play nice with others. Maybe I just want things done a certain way. But again, I felt that I was not going to be able to have the impact that I could on this community unless I kind of opened up my own facility. And a couple other things like my fiance, she has a daughter. So like my stepdaughter, she was not able to train and she competes in powerlifting, which is really cool. But she was not able to train at a lot of these facilities. So I needed to kind of also do it. It was for my family. I wanted to make sure that she had an outlet and a place where she could train. And like you kind of mentioned before, I really think that like having that physical outlet, especially for, young men and young women, not everyone is an athlete. Not everyone has that. So if they could have that physical outlet, learn a lifelong skill of lifting, to help them be healthy and strong and confident, it's so important. So anyways, I digress. As far as my day to day right now, I'll usually train myself and train others in the morning. A lot of my work is done on the computer right now. So all of our programs, regardless of it in person or not, have like what I would consider a hybrid or remote component to it. So we use some different software. I'm kind of looking into some different software as we speak this week, but so I'll do a lot of video review. I'll do text messages, audio messages, video feedback. So we always communicate through the app. So even the gym in New York, I'm not physically there anymore. I will come up from time to time when we run our events, which I'm sure we'll talk into in a little bit. But I make sure that they're kind of following the program optimally. We make adjustments based on how they're feeling and the execution of the lifts. So there's a lot of communication, and that's where like the difference between programming and coaching. We don't just kind of send people a program. So a lot of it is kind of making adjustments and kind of giving technical feedback and actually communicating with the athletes, even if it doesn't need to be a super like long conversations all the time, but just the little things like, okay, like I see like, this movement fault's happening. So these are the things I want you to work on in terms of, from a technical standpoint, also maybe potentially some accessory lifts to strengthen up the areas that could be causing that movement fault. So that's where there's a lot more back and forth. And it's not just like, here's your program and go. It's always evolving. It's always adapting. And the coaching and the consulting is that back and forth, that communication, asking them how they're feeling. And also if there's kind of other factors potentially outside the gym, their nutrition, their sleep, their stress management, that we can kind of decipher. Once a month, we always have a team meeting as well with all our clients. Not everyone takes advantage of that, but we kind of just so we could kind of talk about upcoming events and things like that. So especially with our powerlifting team, we try to focus on, whether it be anywhere from 8 to 16 week training cycles, depending on like the level of the lifter and that sort of thing. And the peaking phase is usually like the last 4 to 6 weeks going into the meet. So then once they get closer to a contest, their programming will kind of change quite a bit and be more specific to them and peaking for that contest. And then I'll usually handle the especially the New York clients and the Delaware and kind of like the Jersey people. We try to kind of organize like a yearly calendar where I can kind of actually coach them in person, which is my game day coaching, because I feel like I'm back coaching football and wrestling. That's like kind of something that I felt like was missing with just kind of powerlifting, just programming and stuff. But actually coaching people on game day is really satisfying because you can kind of see all that hard work kind of pay off from the months and months of training leading up to the event. And we usually try to get like, whether the ladies do their own meet, the guys do their own meet. We always send a team to the Arnold in Ohio, which is always fun. So those are more elite level lifters. And I've traveled, I've coached, I think in like probably around 15 different states over the years. So that's always fun, kind of traveling, coaching at higher level meets, but also just having someone get ready for their first meet. So a lot of it is kind of planning and kind of working backwards and kind of programming and kind of adjusting from that. I mentioned that we do the Zoom meetings once a month, with the team. I do a weekly staff meeting. So I have 2 people that run the gym in New York. So I kind of just check in with them, see how things are going. They administer the programming, kind of open up the gym for me. And then I might train some clients in the morning right now, and then train some of the family members in the evening. I usually do my own training in the morning first thing. I just prefer to do that. When I was teaching, I used to train in the evenings, but now I prefer to train first thing because I just enjoy it. Kind of start the day off on a positive note. So usually I'll train myself. I'll do a lot of my like online coaching or hybrid coaching work. I might do have some in-person clients, and then I'll kind of do like podcasts and kind of meetings like this, kind of midday. And then in the evening, I try to like kind of whenever possible. It might change in the coming months and next year, but I try to have like dinner time is like, and the evening is more family time. So dinner with the family, watch a show with the family. That's really important to me. Spend some time with my fiance. Whether it's a trashy show like Love is Blind or something like that, but we might watch a show or and just kind of recap the day. And then we host and then throughout the month we'll have different events, things like that. So we're going to be hosting 6 different meets in New York, 3 different meets in Delaware, and then 2 to 3 strict curl meets on top of that, probably 1 or 2 in Delaware and then 1 in New York. So we have a pretty kind of, and then that's not including, I also help out with meets with like, Travis Rogers and the WRPF as well. But we run the RPS meet. So there's a lot going on. So a lot of it is kind of promoting and the upcoming events as well. But the day-to-day kind of can change, but I try to do most of my work kind of Monday through Thursday, and then kind of Friday evening and kind of Saturday, I try to keep more like family time. And then Sunday mornings are always kind of whether that be in New York or in Delaware. We try to make that more of like a team training type day. We're still trying to kind of, build a little bit of a crew down here and kind of get some training partners for my fiance and myself. And then sometimes I've been also traveling to Maryland to kind of train with Travis Rogers and his crew, just more for social time. But that's kind of like the day to day right now. Like I said, just recently moved to Delaware, so I'm still kind of getting my bearings. But a lot of it is kind of communication with clients, getting my own training in. And then I'll try to film content and stuff like that as well, whenever I can. So whether that's my own training or just if we're at an event, I'm also trying to showcase a lot of the educational stuff. Like I said, we had some stuff from Eddie Cohen and Mitchell Hooper recently. So anything I'm kind of like learning from other people, I also try to showcase that as well. So whether that be recording a podcast or making an Instagram video, YouTube video, always trying to kind of educate people. So it sounds like it's a lot of stuff and it's not always very clear cut as far as how the schedule is, but I do try to also schedule rest time, especially if I know I have a lot of travel coming up, or I know if I have an event coming up. I'll also try to make sure I kind of, front load my work, kind of just like you would a training program. You have weeks of high intensity, and then you might have weeks where you deload and have low intensity. Never necessarily a week you take completely off, but you definitely need to have some times where you kind of rest and kind of shift gears and prioritize different things, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Thank you. How is Travis Rogers, by the way? I know he's been dealing with a bunch of injuries.
He's killing it, man. We competed together. He won't die. He's doing good. Yeah, we support each other. He's been a good friend. He's a little crazy like me, so he's also a teacher. I know not everyone knows that. So, but yeah, he's a great guy, and yeah, he's a little younger than me, but he's a little bit more beat up. I would say he definitely kind of red lines and pushes a little bit harder, but he's got a great crew in Maryland. He does a lot in terms of running meets. So I try to support, because part of it is just supporting like through strength. It's not necessarily just about like what's going to bring more money in or competing with people. So I just think that rising tide raises all ships. And I think he's got a great thing. And he's like 45 minutes away from where I live now. And he's been awesome. We got to my last powerlifting meet. We competed kind of against each other, which was really fun. We were very close in our totals. He had a much better day than me, 9 for 9. He went 9 for 9. I went 6 for 9, but I lifted it a little bit more than him. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm taking some time off. He's still going strong. He's going to do our push-pull meet in a couple of weeks and bring some guys down. But I think that he loves it. He loves it. It's a big part of his life. He gets very emotional. And sometimes like he could be a little bit more, I try to be a little bit more, I guess, careful with how I communicate online and stuff. Cause I know sometimes, but also I think part of that is just, I've been in the sport a little bit longer than him and I'm a little bit older. So, sometimes that's just kind of experience, but I know like he cares a lot about the sport and he cares a lot about the people in the sport. And so I definitely admire that. So sometimes I know, he's very he might overshare or he might be like, but I think I do appreciate about him because he's very transparent. And I think that's important to whatever you put out there, that you are everyone kind of throws around the word integrity, but I just think it's important that whatever values you hold, and that's kind of like why I ended up kind of quitting teaching and stuff. It just didn't feel like right in my heart. So I have a lot of respect for him because he definitely kind of like sticks to his guns, and not everyone does. And I think that's important no matter what you decide to do, that like you kind of do it for the right reasons, whatever like the right reasons are. But a lot of times you have that feeling in your gut, like if you're kind of doing the right thing. And I think that if you kind of listen to your gut 9 times out of 10, I think that's you're going to feel a lot better about yourself. Maybe even if you're making a little bit less money or things take a little bit more time, but that's just kind of like how I choose to live and the kind of the advice I give to people. I think it's kind of important that, and it's not necessarily about taking the easy way out or kind of, but it's about kind of doing what's right for you. And just kind of making sure that you always stay true to your mission. And that's what kind of whatever values that you have. That's what kind of integrity means, is that you kind of stay true to those values. And when you kind of start to kind of feel like weird about a decision you make, or maybe feel like you made the wrong decision, it's usually because you kind of broke some values. I think it's important if you're a young person listening to this or not, think about like what you kind of value in a person, what you kind of value in terms of your life and the people that you're connected with. So if you ever kind of break some of those values, that could be why you're feeling a certain way. If you're, but if you kind of stay true to your values, even if you're kind of going through a hard time, you can kind of know that you're doing the right thing, and that can kind of help drive you forward and kind of build more momentum. And I think it's even helpful for me because this has been a tough transition. Leaving, my friends and family are all in New York, but I, chose to kind of move down here with my fiance. And it's been hard. But I know it's the right thing. It's going to take time. It's not going to be easy, but oftentimes things that are going to be really good, there's going to be like some growing pains, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say when you just asked about Travis and stuff, I think that it's important that you kind of surround yourself that people that have integrity and people that hold themselves to a high standard. I think that's really important if you want to grow and you want to advance and you want to get better. And if you're kind of surrounding yourself with people that don't have high standards, or they don't kind of, or they're constantly kind of breaking certain values, or maybe they don't value the same things as you maybe need to kind of reevaluate kind of who you're, spending time with. I think that's really important.
Awesome. Thank you. So kind of going back to the question before this, of those things that you do, like coaching, adjusting programs, emails, organizing events, what's like the thing that takes up the most time for you? Like is kind of the bulk of your energy in the day, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think it's all about communication and coaching with people at the end of the day. Coaching could be writing a program. Coaching could be checking form. Coaching could be checking in on someone, asking to see how they're doing. The thing that like is tough for me, but is because I like love this stuff so much, but what is always tough for me as a coach is like the people that there are some people that need a lot of accountability. And I'm just like not wired that way. Like it's really rare for me to miss training. Even like this week, I just didn't feel great. I didn't really want to train Monday. And I still showed up. It's like, I'm just like programmed, you know what I mean? It's just like, and I'm glad I did. So I'm like human. Like it's not like every day I jump out of bed and I'm like ready to like attack, the squat rack. But there are some people that will just kind of like fall off the face of the earth, and they kind of get embarrassed. So if you're someone that gets coaching, or maybe sounds, if you kind of resonate with this, I think sometimes people feel embarrassed, like when they like haven't trained for a week or they missed a couple of workouts and they feel like their coach is going to be mad at them. Like that's when you need to reach out to your coach. So anyway, so coaching can be sometimes following up with people that like haven't been consistent. I wish that we just like lived in a world where people could just be okay with like, hey man, I was going through a funk. I was a little depressed, or I just got really busy. I had one of my, he's a great client. He's got some master's records in powerlifting and stuff. And he just told me like, I was helping I think he said his daughter, he was helping one of his family members move. He didn't train like all last week. Cool. Thanks for letting me know. This is what I want you to do. I want you to repeat last week, reduce your training weights a little bit. And we made some adjustments, and then he got right back on track. And now he's training. He had a great session yesterday. I wasn't mad at him. I wasn't. So I think, and that's part of being a coach, is kind of understanding that like everyone has different like circumstances. So going back to your question, basically kind of just communicating with people is like the big bulk of my time. Outside of that, and again, part of it is just because, because I do think that leading by example is important. A big chunk of my time is also trying to figure out and document my own training, trying to make things better. So I do, because my health and because I had those health issues, being 340 pounds and things like that. I take my own training and nutrition very seriously. I'd say my nutrition still can be better, but my training is always up there in I'd say my top 3 priorities. So I do like think that like you need to, my old business coach used to say, like when the plane is going down, he would use the analogy of a plane going down. they always instruct the parents, you got to put your own mask on first. And I do believe that's true for parents. That's true for anybody. That's true for coaches. I used to be that fat, overweight, obese coach, and that weighed on me for a really long time. But back in like at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, I started to make changes, and I was like, I can't be that guy anymore. Because I was starting to preach about longevity. I was starting to preach about like all this stuff, but I wasn't living it. And that weighed heavy on my heart. So talking about like when your values are not like lining up and you feel that something is wrong. And me being 340 pounds, at the time, I was probably got back up to 330. I knew I wasn't like, I was kind of being a hypocrite with my message, and that was weighing heavy on my heart. So I needed to make a change, and I started to kind of drop a weight class, one weight class at a time. So coaching is a big part of what I do, but also kind of like training myself is a big priority. And some people may not agree. And there's like we were talking about Mike Boyle before. He was saying that like a lot of trainers, I think you should only be doing 30-minute work. I'm paraphrasing, but I remember reading about this, that a lot of trainers. Now, I don't think that you should be so vain and thinking about your training 24/7, but I do think that you need to take care of yourself. And I do think that you need to, your health always needs to be a priority. So that's always kind of a big thing on my list as well. And then outside of that is like taking care of my family, making sure the little one's getting her training in, making sure my fiance is getting her training in. Making sure, because, and she's had some health problems and stuff, over the years. She's dealing with, and this is something that she's talked about publicly. So it's not like I'm saying anything that she wouldn't. She's been dealing with this thyroid issue, which has been really tough for her. So I want to make sure that if her training is good, if I could help her with her training, help her with her nutrition, that's going to make me feel good, because we're going to be healthy and strong as a household. So the coaching is kind of the number one thing. And then my own training and my family's training is probably like number two. And then outside of that, it's like, would be, more marketing. And I don't really like that stuff as much. It's just kind of, it is what it is. I think stuff like this is more beneficial, like actually having conversations and people, but, the Instagram posts, that kind of thing, the social media, the marketing, that would be kind of like lower on the list. And I probably could do a better job of being a better businessman and doing more marketing stuff, but I'm a technician first. I'm a coach first. That's just how I'm wired. So, that's just kind of like how I operate, where other people are more business minded and they might have like that be more of their priority. But that's why I would say I'm a coach first, and, a businessman, entrepreneur, like, that's like lower tier for me, but that's just, what makes me feel good in my heart. So I have to kind of follow that.
Yeah, I 100% agree about the marketing thing. The organic marketing is, I think, much better for a long-term client base. Like I first saw you in Larry's videos, like guys like Dave Tate, I'd much rather buy stuff from him than like Rogue, for example. It's kind of like if there's like personality behind the business, you're gonna want to support it a lot more. So I definitely agree with that. So would you say the like holding yourself accountable and almost keeping yourself prepared, it was like the hardest part of your business, or was it something more like business than that, I guess?
Yeah. I'd have to think about it maybe a little bit more as far as some things that come to mind. I think, for me, like the coaching part, the helping people part became very natural. So like the X's and O's, the programming, the actual coaching, like, I knew like early on I wanted to be a teacher. It just was like, some people like, I just felt like, and I can't quite put my finger on like why, but even in high school, I helped out with my kid wrestling program. I mentioned I was kind of elected captain and stuff. I don't know. It's just, I felt like that was just something that was in me, and I can't quite explain it. It's just like, it's always been there. And maybe that's because some other coaches and teachers may have had like some impacts on me, especially like my, one of my middle school wrestling coaches, he like was a former power lifter, and he really kind of got me into training and stuff. And I give him a lot of credit because I wouldn't be talking with you if it wasn't for him. And I think part of that was because I was a fat, shy kid that wasn't really athletic and didn't really have a lot of success. But as a seventh grader, I won one wrestling match, and like I got my hand raised, and that was a big deal because I saw like for once my work paid off. And that kind of really got me like really diving into more training. And then I started to kind of like lift weights a little bit in 8th grade and 9th grade. And then 10th grade, I was kind of like very, very serious into weight training 10th grade on. And I've never stopped since. So that physical element, I think, really helped me with the mental. So in terms of like from the business side of things, I think kind of managing the finances, budgeting, making hard decisions. I think managing people is very challenging. Like I kind of mentioned before, I like kind of have like a hard time, kind of working with others and things like that and communicating like in that way, because I'm so particular about like having things done a certain way. So I could be maybe a little bit more flexible. Some things I think are helpful if someone does want to run a business, or I wasn't able to do it now because I couldn't find any places that are local. But when I was in New York, I was taking a lot of improv classes. And one of the things I learned for improv, basically what helps move a scene forward, is if you accept and add to what your partner says. And part of like being able to yes and accept and add is you need to like listen first. So that's something I try to remember. I'm a little bit out of practice. I've been getting better because I've been doing a little bit more podcasts and stuff, but I'm not as sharp as I was when I was doing the improv all the time. I would think a lot quicker, and I would be a lot more sharp in my speech, and my reactions and my ability to communicate is a lot better. But I've been getting better because I've been doing a little bit more podcasting as of late, and just kind of having more conversations with people. Part of that was just I spent a lot of time moving here and then setting up the new gym. So it's been a little bit of like a break in action. But so I think being able to learn to communicate effectively, kind of work with others, kind of manage people, and kind of you got to be able to market yourself. So I think that there is something to be said about, like the popular kids and stuff like that. I think, we're seeing that more. I think being able to understand people's tendencies, being able to understand what people are like into, being able to read people's emotions, read people's body language. You kind of mentioned that you would purchase something from Dave Tate. So if you're going to get into some sort of business, people have to know, like, and trust you before they buy. So I could be the best coach in the world, but if they don't know, like, and trust me, they're not going to purchase services from me. I could be really knowledgeable, but if I'm not like a likable guy, or they don't want to spend an hour with me, they're not going to want to, train with me. So those are some things I could still be better with. I could still be a better communicator. I could still like manage people better. I could still be better at marketing. So yeah, I think, and budgeting money, the finances, things like that. So those are all things I think you got to like kind of be careful with, and I could definitely do a better job with. But I always kind of focused on my unique ability. I think has always been coaching, but I know that I need to kind of bring up other areas. And it's kind of up for debate. There's some people that say kind of lean into your strength. And there's other people that say you should bring up your weaknesses. But I think if you're going to be a business owner, you do need to have like a certain like level of everything. And I could certainly be better with the financials. I could certainly be better with like that kind of thing, the marketing. But I think I always kind of end up leaning into my strength, which is coaching. So, I think that I think it's important for people to be objective, to kind of know like what their unique ability is, and kind of really truly like understand that. I think for me, I have enough data to like, I've helped people achieve all-time world records, over 100 lifters, nationally ranked top 50 in their weight class in powerlifting. I've achieved a lot myself, elite in 4 weight classes, 800-pound squat and 6. So I feel like in terms of strength training, I have enough data points to like know that I know what I'm talking about, and I can help people get strong. But in terms of the other stuff, I kind of know that I might be lacking in other areas. So I think it's important to kind of know where your deficits are, and also where you're interested in. So I don't think you necessarily need this like very formal, thought out master business plan. I think it is important to take action at the end of the day, because if you don't take action, you're not going to kind of move yourself forward in any goal, in any endeavor. But if you are like someone like myself, some mistake, I'll just kind of share with you some of the mistakes I made. I know I'm a coach. So my first hire should have not been a coach. It should have been an administrative person. If you're going to partner with someone that doesn't have the same skill set as you, partner with someone that complements your skills. So that was a big mistake I made early on. I wish that I had someone that was able to kind of do more of the back end stuff for me so I could coach. I tried also not coaching for a bit and just being a business owner. That was heavy on my heart. Conflict. It was a conflict. I knew that was wrong. I knew something was wrong in my gut. I tried to hire all these coaches. I got off the floor. Didn't work. It was not good. It was a bad time for the business. Really bad time. So that hurt the gym at the time. So everything that I kind of do, always back to how can I get Coach Gaglione to, how can I get to more coaching and offload other stuff? So I have some people that help me, like, here and there, edit some videos and stuff like that. That's not the best use of my time. So if I can afford it, if I could budget for it, how can I kind of lean into my unique ability, which is coaching, which is why I like to take conversations. Even you're getting like coaching right now. People that are going to listen to this after the fact are going to get some coaching out of this. They're going to get like really good information they could take action on. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. But so just kind of knowing like your strengths and your weaknesses is going to be important, and kind of like knowing like when you could strategically partner with someone or not. That will kind of tell you like what your deficits are going to be. So for me, it's the financial stuff. It's the marketing stuff. It's more of like the pure business stuff, where some people thrive with that. Some people they love that stuff. So just kind of understand like where you're interested and where your strengths are. So I hope that, makes sense and answers your question.
Yeah, 100%. So the next question I was going to ask is, what'd you say is the most rewarding part of your job? Like either a moment or just in general?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, when I was coaching primarily wrestlers, when you see like the wrestler get their hand raised, man, that's like the coolest thing. It's like, if there's like a symbol of like hard work paying off, like that's it. It's getting your hand raised. So, and if you've noticed, if you followed me over the years, if you watched, you kind of mentioned you watched some of like Larry Wheels and stuff. In powerlifting, you don't necessarily get your hand raised, but if you noticed, like when Larry, at the last meet I coached him when he broke Eric Lillibridge's 308 record, I raised his hand for him. It's like important to recognize like that's like a symbol, like you set a goal, you worked for it, you achieved it. And a lot of people nowadays, they don't, and in the past too, but people don't follow through. People talk a lot, people comment a lot, not a lot of people doing stuff. So I think that if you could set a goal and achieve it, that's like a big deal, even if it's small. So seeing someone like watch the lights at a powerlifting meet go off and they get 3 white lights and they get their goal. They hit an elite total, they hit their first 400-pound deadlift, they hit their whatever it is. That's like why you do it. It's for that it's for that little moment. When someone's training on a deadlift, you're not sure if they're going to get it. It looks like their eyeball is going to explode, but they fight through it. They get the down command. That's like, you get like goosebumps just thinking about it. It's for those moments. And that's where, like, for me, like, I know, like, I could probably make more money online and all this stuff, but man, when you are at a meet or you're at a tournament, like when I used to coach wrestling, and you get to see that up close and personal. We had a guy, Paulie Acosta. If I could get him on a podcast again, I would love to, but I think he doesn't like talking about it too much. But he had brain surgery. See, huge. I was really worried about him, but he's such a tough kid. He just kind of, it's like, it's no big deal, whatever. He just competed at the drug tested American Pro. He's a teenage kid. I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to be back at full strength. He deadlifted 700 pounds on his last attempt. I mean, that was like unbelievable. And like at the American Pro, it was kind of crazy because you had the fireworks going off and all this stuff. But seeing him like go from the operating table to having like, is literally his skull like sewn up. And then being able to deadlift 700 pounds again. Like, there's no better feeling in the world than getting to witness that. And like, I wasn't sure, like, there's no like guarantee that's going to like happen with the best program, with the best nutrition. He had a very invasive surgery, some neurological issues and all this stuff. We weren't, I didn't know if he was going to, but like, I was like, we're going to try, and we're going to put a plan together, and we're going to do this, and we're going to show up. And he performed, and he hit his best total ever. It was a small increase, but after getting brain surgery, damn, any increase freaking good. He hit his best total ever. And that's like not an all, like, again, watching Larry break an all-time world record is just as sweet as, seeing, maybe some, mom, deadlift for the first time or hit their first 300-pound dead, whatever it is. It's just watching the person's work pay off in real time. So yeah, those moments are just priceless. And those are like the moments that you live for.
Thank you. That's a crazy story about that kid.
Crazy.
Definitely. If he's ever comfortable with it, I would love to hear that in a podcast, because that's very inspirational. I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear that. So I know you kind of touched on this already about skills that you use to kind of get where you are and made you the coach you are. If you could just summarize like 3 skills or 5 skills that were the most important to get you where you are right now.
I think everything starts with communication. So I think that's really important. So I think like taking those improv classes, I think was really helpful. I don't really know. Again, I'm all self-taught. So then communication is number one. My communication also could be better, FYI. But the only way you do it is by practicing, So getting off your keyboard, doing face-to-face events, doing podcasts, talking with people, having actual discussion. So communication skills is really important. You also don't pick up on body language if you don't like do face-to-face stuff. So communication is number one, whether that be a coach or a business owner. In terms of, for me personally, I think like actually going through like the programs and kind of like myself has been super valuable. So like your own personal experience, you got to get repetitions, just like in the gym. So whatever you want to do, you got to get reps. If you want to be a business owner, you got to start some businesses. If you want to be a coach, you got to coach people, and if you're going to coach in nutrition, if you're going to coach in powerlifting, do a few meets, if you're going to be a nutrition coach, try a bunch of diets, try a bunch of different training programs, put yourself through it, put people through it. You got to get repetitions in. So consistency is a really important skill. And if you ever listen to like kind of Andy Frisell and stuff, he's not everyone's cup of tea, but like the whole premise of like the 75 hard program is that like discipline is a perishable skill. So you need to kind of do things that challenge your discipline. Just like in the gym, you need to stimulate, you need to kind of challenge the muscle. You need to progressively overload your muscle for it to grow. So whether it be consistency or whether it be discipline, you need to do things that kind of challenge those things. I think those are really important skills. So I think things that you could do to kind of develop consistency and discipline is like setting daily and weekly tasks and just making sure you always check them off. I like the idea of daily minimums. Some people like the idea of daily maximums and things like that, but set a minimum amount of work that you're going to achieve each week or each day. I think that's a really important skill. And I kind of got the idea of like a checklist off, like something like a 75 hard, which again, you can agree with it or not. There's some things that are great. There's some things that you can kind of poke holes in from like a nutrition or science standpoint. But the idea is that you write out the list. Write out the list. You do the list, and you do the list now. I think that's something to that effect. So write the list, do the list now. So you're taking action, and you're learning to take action and assist. So like you need to have some sort of, I think the trick is kind of figuring out like what those tasks are. And that's where kind of a coach can kind of come in handy, whether it be a business coach or a trainer. So like, if you want to be a power lifter, you need to squat, bench, and deadlift at least once a week. So those would be like weekly tasks. If you want to get bigger, you need to hit a certain amount of, let's say, 1 gram per pound per protein. So you need to be able to set daily and weekly goals and daily and weekly tasks and be able to check those off. So I'd say communication. I think, I guess goal setting and setting tasks would be like kind of number 2. And then maybe some sort of personal experience. It's not really a skill, but I think that if you kind of just keep it simple and kind of just do those things, and kind of goal setting and kind of working towards them would kind of cover a lot of things. So communication, setting goals, and then kind of working toward goals, because that kind of encompasses the checklist and encompasses your own kind of things. I also think this is not a skill, but just like a little tidbit for everyone. It's like, keep the most important, do the most important things first. Dan John says, keep the goal. So do the most important things first. So if that's the thing that you don't want to do, if it's the thing, whatever's going to move the needle towards your goal, which is why I always try to do like a lot of my coaching stuff first thing, because that's the most important thing for me. My training is very important. It's earlier in the day. So do the most important things first.
All right, cool. Thank you. So this is the last question I have. Just what's some like general advice you give to someone trying to get where you're at right now, or just anything you want to say that we didn't touch on or I didn't ask about?
Sure. I think one thing that's important, and I could probably do this soon. So my good buddy Zach Evanesh I think it's I forget the timeline, but imagine your perfect day. Not a special day, but just like what's your perfect like normal Tuesday, and write it out hour by hour. So before I had my gym, I was kind of living my old perfect day for a while, and then now my perfect day certainly has changed, and it's going to change again. But at the time I was teaching. At the time, I did not have a gym at the time. So like my perfect day was like get up, train with my buddies, coach some people. Like it was very basic, but like at some point, maybe like 5 years down the road or however many years down the road, eventually like I was like living that perfect day. But actually as an exercise, could be a little scary. Write out like your perfect day. Just like think about like a typical Monday or Tuesday. What time do you get up? Where do you live? Where do you go? Where do you work? Who do you see? What do you eat? What do you try to be as specific as you can? I think that if you could write out your perfect day, and then you can start to kind of reverse engineer. And then I think it's also important to have first start with expansive thinking and then kind of go down. So I think when you're kind of writing out your perfect day initially, don't be okay with just like being, I don't know if crazy is the right word, but just don't put any like limits on it. Like really write down like what you truly want. So people talk about vision boards and things like that, but I think that's kind of important. I know for me at the end of the day, like at some point, the reason why I'm in Delaware now is like, family is important to me. Having a life partner is important to me. I could be very happy in New York, but my fiance is not in New York. So there's a reason that I'm here, so I'm still trying to figure out like I probably should do that, take my own advice and kind of do that again. But I'm getting closer and closer to that perfect day. And that's kind of the whole point of all this stuff, is that once you kind of know where you have the end goal in mind, and then you kind of chip away and then think about what are the daily and weekly actions that are going to take you to that destination. And that's where kind of having a coach can be very helpful. I always say that a coach is like your GPS. It's not going to get you there, but it's going to give you directions and it's going to reroute for you if there's a roadblock, if there's traffic. So having the right GPS navigation is going to be very helpful for you get to your destination. But ultimately, you're in the driver's seat and you still got to drive yourself from point A to point B. But before you get in your car and start driving, you got to know like where you're going. because you could have the best navigation system in the world. I can give you all the program is like your directions. I can give you the best program, but if I don't know where you're going or where you want to go, you're just going to be sitting in your car twiddling your thumbs. So I think it's really important that people get a handle on what they want and be very clear with what they want and know like why they want it. And then you can kind of work backwards from there. But I would kind of invite you guys to try that perfect day exercise. I think it's really helpful. And it can provide a lot of clarity for what you truly and what you should be spending your time with. And if you're not sure, like talk it out. But I think it's important, journal those things and write it down, put it on paper. You want to be able to hold it and see it and make it real. I think that's really important. So I think that's like the best like piece of advice I can kind of give somebody for starting out. And again, it may take you 5 years, it may take you 10 years, but that's okay. Like you don't need to be in a rush to do this. When I did my first powerlifting meet, I wasn't thinking about squatting 900 pounds or, I squatted 1,000 pounds in training. I squatted 900 in a meet. I wasn't thinking about doing 900 my first meet, but I got a little bit better each time and I kept showing up and I kept coming back. You got to keep showing up.
Thank you. I love the idea of the like perfect day, because a lot of people will break down like a month. What do I want to do this week or this day? But I like the idea of breaking stuff down an hour at a time, because then you won't get overwhelmed. You know exactly what you need. And as long as you stay on track or generally on track, you'll be successful each and every day. I really like that idea.
Anything else that you had questions on before I let you go?
No, not really. Opportunity. I really appreciate it. It's always good to get knowledge from someone that's been doing something a lot longer than you. So I really appreciate that, and hopefully one of these days I'll be able to go down there and compete in one of your meets. That'd be fun. So
you're always welcome, my man. And that goes for everyone. I think it's important. Yeah. Doors always open. You can make the trip. Like I said, we're in Milton, Delaware now. For anyone that's like kind of listening after the fact, I would just say like, whether it be this podcast or something else, take action. What's like one thing that kind of bring you forward today? And if you find this message helpful, please share it with a friend. Please give the podcast a 5-star review if you guys enjoyed it. And until next time, stay strong. And then we'll see you soon. Let's see.